Barbecue's unfair reputation. I want you to think about the last time someone told you that barbecue wasn't healthy. Maybe it was a doctor, maybe it was a family member at the table. Maybe it was some article you scrolled past. And I want you to think
Barbecue's
about what
unfair
they
reputation.
actually
I
knew
want you to think
about
about the
how that
last time
food was
someone
made,
told
who
you that
cooked it,
barbecue
what went
wasn't
into it,
healthy.
how long it
Maybe
took.
it was a doctor.
Because
Maybe
here's
it
what
was a
I
family
know.
member at the
When you
table.
control the fire,
Maybe
you control
it
the
was some
food.
article you
And real
scrolled
backyard
past.
barbecue
And I
done
want you
right
to think
doesn't owe
about what they
anybody an
actually
apology
knew. I want you to think
about
about the
how that
last
food. All right, welcome to the Backyard SmokeMaster BBQ Podcast. I'm your host, Kenyatta Robinson, and I'm a little thrown off here because I'm getting some little warning messages that I can't seem to get off of my screen. So I hope you guys are getting my live feed going out on YouTube. You should be seeing and hearing me live, but please let me know if that is not the case. Okay, I do see a comment here that says foiled again. Okay. I kind of get the feeling that this isn't going out the way it should be going out, which is not good. Okay, you can see the feed. Can you hear me okay? Okay, this is going live. This is like the nightmare. Okay. Okay, everybody's saying loud and clear. So it looks like the YouTube feed is going okay. But the problem I'm having is the interface that I'm using that I need to use in order to see and interact with you guys is not doing anything. Okay, so trying to think. I think I am going to have to do a restart or reboot and try this again. Um, okay, so bear with me, guys. Come back. I'm gonna have to do a restart because I'm unable to really proceed on my end, even though it seems to be going out fine on YouTube. This live technology, boy. Okay, so bear with me. We're gonna do a restart. Give me like 2 minutes. Just go back to Backyard SmokeMaster BBQ, that page on YouTube, because it's going to go out and it's going to have a different link, a different address. So, um, sorry about that. We're going to have to do a reboot. Okay. I think I'm back. I think I'm back live. I think we have the same link that we had before. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to start all the way over and hope that this thing is going out the way I hope it does. All right. So here we go. Here we go. Stick with me. Okay. Barbecue's unfair reputation. I want you to think about the last time someone told you that barbecue wasn't healthy. Maybe it was a doctor, maybe it was a family member at the table, maybe it was some article you scrolled past. And I want you to think about what they actually knew about that food, about how that food was made, who cooked it, what went into it, how long it took. Because here's what I know. When you control the fire, you control the food. And real barbecue, done right, doesn't owe anybody an apology. Hey, barbecue family, welcome to episode 106 of the Backyard SmokeMaster BBQ Podcast. I'm your host, Kenyatta Robinson, coming to you. We're definitely live because you're seeing all the mistakes, warts, and all the technical issues. It's all going down. But I'm going to persevere just like you should with your barbecue. All right, I think everything is going well. We're going to have a great show. There's a lot to this episode, a lot of information to bring to you guys. Tonight, we're going to go deep on a topic that I feel strongly about: barbecue and healthy eating. Not necessarily from a diet culture angle, but from a pitmaster's perspective. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge that the inspiration for this episode came from an article that I came across on the Smoke Sheet. And this article is called Grilling Smart: How to Keep Your Barbecue Healthy by Sean Ludwig and Ryan Cooper. So drop it in the chat. What diet or lifestyle are you eating around right now? Is it keto? Is it a plant-based diet? I'm just trying to get, or are you just trying to eat a little bit cleaner? I just want to get a feel for that. Now, before we get into it, a couple of housekeeping items. First, there will not be a live podcast next Wednesday, April 29th. But this is important. That does not mean that we're going dark. So inside of the Backyard SmokeMaster Society, we have a subgroup in there called the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle is going to be meeting that week for an exclusive members only barbecue conversation. There's no agenda, no cameras for the public, just the Inner Circle talking all things barbecue. So if you've been thinking about upgrading your society membership, now is a great time to do that. And I'll tell you more about that later in the show. But right now, I have to give my shout out to you guys that have been persevering and hanging with me through all of this chaotic start. Love to shout out the guys in the comments. So let me go all the way to the top and get you guys your proper due because I do appreciate it. We've got Dan's Diamond Detailing. Glad that you're able to join us tonight. Appreciate it. We've always got Correctional Officer for Lockdown who's sending some salutes to the Real Meat Stick. He says he's sending you a cold mug with Modelo Especial. I'm probably butchering that, but you guys get my point. Frank Meister is in the building. Let's see, we got Mama Mika. Good to see you. Always appreciate you as well as she shouts out Correctional Officer who says, make sure you join the Inner Circle. It's definitely an awesome part of the society and truly full of great insight and dialogue with barbecue fellowship. So I always appreciate that. Now, Mama Mika says, we can see you. Looks like it's in phone mode, vertical orientation. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, there should be two feeds going out on YouTube. So one of them is the traditional horizontal, but we also have a vertical feed for the folks who might just be watching on the phone. So you may be tuned in to the vertical feed, but there is an horizontal one if you want to watch us in the traditional format. Okay, Real Meat Stick confirms that I am live and the anticipation is killing him. So, I really appreciate you guys. Let's see. We got Society Brother Mike is in the building. He's ready to get this thing going. I think we did have an echo for a second. Hopefully that got fixed amongst all the other things to do. Let's see. Sound is good. I can hear you. Okay. I think we are good. I think some folks, unfortunately, are getting me on the vertical portrait feed. Hopefully, some of you are also getting me in the traditional horizontal. So, yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on here. Good to see the Train Man 64. All right, so I think we got everybody in here. Jeff says, Society Brother Jeff says he can see the feed. Smiling Family says loud and clear. So you guys are definitely active in the comments, which I always appreciate for sure. And yep, that's right. We got 2 YouTube links. Real Meat Stick is drinking margaritas. So yeah, you guys are here. You're in the building. We're live. We're ready to go. You guys have your drinks of choice. Love it. Love it. Okay. So as I always say every week, we definitely have, we've got tonight's topic. So I'll be, going through some things related to the show topic. But as I always say, you guys' your comments are the engine that truly drives this show. Any barbecue topic is welcome. So it can be about what we're talking about here tonight. Or if you have a burning question, burning issue that you want to get some feedback on related to barbecue, please don't hesitate to drop that in the comments as well. Everything is Fair game. The smiling family help getting us on track says avoid processed food, staying on the outer lanes of the supermarket, avoiding sugar. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. And then I see some comments here related to the different formats, the different live chats. But all of both of those feeds should be coming in. So no matter if you're watching me vertically or in horizontal mode, your comments should come through good and clear. And it's gonna be a great show. All right. Now, also, before we get into it, if you haven't already, please check out the show poll. And that one might only be visible if you're watching me in the traditional horizontal YouTube feed. But we do have a poll question. What's your biggest barbecue health challenge right now? So make sure you take a moment to answer that question and then also drop it in the chat, giving you 4 choices. A, avoiding heavy sauces and marinades. B, managing char and flare-ups. C, finding healthier sides to serve alongside. And D, getting my diet to work with barbecue at all. I think I saw in the society where a correctional officer indicated that his answer was D, getting my diet to work with barbecue at all. So definitely jump in there, let me know, and we will look at those results later on in the show. Okay, so let's get to it. We've got a lot to get to here. So, tip number 1, and I think this might be obvious, but maybe not so obvious. Start with lean proteins flavor first. So, some ideas here would be things like do skinless chicken breasts, salmon, shrimp, seafood. Do things that are high in protein, low saturated fat, and they all take seasoning and smoke incredibly well. On the beef side, think sirloin and tenderloin, leaner cuts that still develop a beautiful crust and deep beefy flavor on the grill. Trim visible fat before the cook. You're not going to lose flavor. The rub, the smoke, the bark, they replace it. Some more ideas. Portobello mushrooms, cauliflower steaks, jackfruit. Over direct heat with the right rub and a little wood smoke, they developed a depth of flavor that surprises even the most committed meat eaters. Oh, we got to take a moment here to acknowledge we got a super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that from Society Brother Jeff, giving us our first super chat of the night. He says, consider serving sauces on the side. It can save some calories and allow the spice to go front and center. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I just kind of think that should be a rule anyway, that your barbecue, ideally, your barbecue should be able to stand on its own with or without sauce. That should be optional. But, if you really do want to, maybe baste those ribs in sauce, maybe again, think about putting it on the side, and doing it that way. Make it optional. Let me hit a few more of these comments. So Mama Mika says, I focus on higher protein these days, lower carb, but I like moderation. I'll never give up my cornbread or mac and cheese. And I think that's fair. That's fair, right? If you are being, very deliberate and intentional, with your protein choices, then you have some room, some wiggle room to splurge a little bit, with, those yummy barbecue sides like mac and cheese and cornbread. I mean, those go hand in hand. Kettle Mania says, I've been trying to do more meat proteins as well from the grill and smoker as much as possible. Correctional officer says, I have already received my honorable discharge. The VA can try giving me an Article 15 for not following any direct orders that affect tasting my barbecue. I will follow through with cutting back. I mean, everything in moderation, right? I mean, make smart choices. I think when you try and cut some things completely out, what ends up happening is, it almost feels like you're punishing yourself. And then, you have that cheat moment and maybe you go overboard. So I think, kind of changing your approach, will make a big difference. The train man, with regard to the poll, says he's changing his answer to D. I think D was, fitting your diet choices into your barbecue program, basically along those lines. And correctional officer says, I want to smoke some frog legs. All right. Well, I have not smoked frog legs. I don't really know much about it, but I'm kind of thinking that's probably a lean protein, right? Let us know in the comments if you guys have any experience with that. The train man says, wife just got diagnosed with a condition that she should not consume smoked meats of char at all. Okay, so we're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk about the char and the approach, an approach that I think we can take with regard to trying to minimize char and its impact on the meat, the proteins that we are cooking. But that's a salient point. And Mama Mika agrees with Jeff. She says, when I grill wings, we use sauce for dipping, but leave the wings just seasoned. Absolutely. I agree with that approach for sure. And correctional officer says squid, calamari should be nice to smoke too. And with regard to kind of depriving yourself, Kettle Mania says if you deprive yourself entirely from those cravings, it's definitely a recipe for failure. Moderation is key. Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So again, let's see, we talked about the portobello, the cauliflower steaks. So, okay, just kind of giving you guys in terms of, some good food choices. Salmon on the grill, just as an example, I have found it to be what I consider to be a flavor revelation. It reminds me a lot of, for instance, chicken. I feel like chicken is one of the proteins that you can do so many different things to in terms of rubs, flavoring. There's so many things you can do, and they all pretty much work well, whatever your preference is with chicken. I feel like salmon is in a similar category, and I don't think folks really take advantage of salmon on the grill as much as you can, but you don't even have to get fancy with salmon. So a simple rub of salt, pepper, and a touch of brown sugar is going to develop an incredible bark on a salmon that will rival any protein on the menu. Staying in the seafood realm, shrimp, swordfish, mahi, they cook fast on the grill. They take smoke well, and they pick up char flavor that makes them feel indulgent, even though they're amongst the leanest proteins that you can eat. Getting back to that point about trimming. So, trimming a brisket flat or pork butt before the cook doesn't cost you anything flavor wise. The smoke, bark, and seasoning do all the heavy lifting. And it makes me think back to a couple months ago, I started seeing a lot of like these posts on social media about people bragging or trying to encourage others to not bother at all trimming a brisket, just putting the whole thing on the smoker, which I still don't really see the logic in. They're trying to make that argument that it's not going to make any difference. You know, your brisket's going to taste the same whether you trim it or not. Just from a pure health perspective, trim that brisket. Don't leave all those big hard pockets of fat because on there, they're not all going to melt away into the food during your cook. Um, and I think all that fat also, you know, prevents some of that good smoke flavor as well as your seasonings. They're not going to penetrate down to the meat level if you're not trimming the fat. So I'm gonna stand behind that. Got a super chat from the Carpenter. He says, hope to move hope to move into the smoke fished realm of barbecue while not completely abandoning beef, pork, or poultry. Yeah, like I said, I think smoked fish is definitely, especially if you're trying to be intentional about having, you know, healthier proteins on your grill, definitely do not overlook the fish. Like we talked about, do everything in moderation. I mean, unless you have real specific reasons for completely abandoning beef, pork, or poultry. But I think if you work in fish, you know, then you're able to enjoy those other proteins in a good, fair, proper moderation. Ketomania says shrimp are fabulous on the grill and quick. Also, absolutely. Shrimp does not take very long. Matter of fact, you should really keep an eye on the shrimp, you know, to make sure that you don't overdo it, because otherwise it can become really chewy, really rubbery if you leave that shrimp on too long. Real Meat Stick says when using prime or top choice briskets, the meat stri- the meat striations of fat cannot be avoided. That fat rendering from collagen to gelatin is what makes that brisket so juicy and tender. Yeah, and that's, you know, and that kind of brings up a potential debate, right? Like prime is gonna have more of those fat striations throughout it. You know, and we all have heard that saying that fat equals flavor. So we get a little bit more fat on the prime than we do on choice. Is that really what we want? Is that what we're aiming for? Or is there a good balance? I mean, I don't really know what necessarily the right answer is. I do know that, you know, when I'm doing brisket, I do prefer to go with prime, but I do think you can make outstanding brisket with choice as well. So it's an interesting debate. Correctional officer says with the cost of meat, I believe fish is going to become a very popular item for grilling this year. Yeah, you know, I haven't been paying super close attention to the price of fish, so I haven't really noticed if there's been an uptick in the price of fish compared to other proteins. I mean, it just feels like everything has been going up. But brisket or beef in particular has really been one that has caught my attention. Matter of fact, while thinking about beef, I saw a video recently from Mad Scientist Barbecue where he was talking about using top blade beef, smoking it the same way you would smoke a brisket and getting very similar results. He in his video, I mean, it did look just like how your brisket would look after you slow smoked it, and that could be a very good price, uh, a cheaper alternative to look at right now because brisket is just completely through the roof. Okay, let me get through a couple of more of these and then we'll hit back on the comments. Um, so, again, we're still talking about starting with lean proteins. Okay, so smoke and char. Smoke and char do for vegetables what braising does for meat. Okay. Uh, hold on, I got myself a little bit off here. Where is that in my notes? Well, anyway, that's the main point there. Smoke and char do for vegetables what braising does for meat. And I'm a little bit sensitive because we had that earlier comment about wanting to get away from char. So I'm a little bit being a little bit mindful about the promotion of charring. But there is a difference between doing a good char and then overdoing it. And we're going to hit on that a little bit later as well. So let's talk about the general mindset shift. Okay, so lean proteins are not a compromise, like we talked about earlier. Is going from prime to choice, is that a compromise? So don't think of it that way. Lean proteins are not a compromise. Remember, on the grill, flavor comes from the fire, the rub, and the smoke, and it's not coming from the fat content of the protein. So I want to try and begin to dispel that saying that fat equals flavor. Let's start to get away from that, and not rely so much on fat being flavor, but remembering that our flavor again comes from the fire, the rub, and the smoke. Okay. Now, Ketomania says, not sure of the validity, but I read recently that chicken thighs have more nutrients when using bone in with skin on during the cook. Okay, that's an interesting observation as well. So would love to know if any of you guys have read or heard anything similar to that, because we always hear that boneless, skinless is the way that we should go with chicken. That's preferred in terms of a pure health standpoint than something like what Ketomania is describing, chicken thighs with the bone in and the skin on. So that is an interesting comment. And Mama Mika says, uh, uh, perforate grill plans. Okay, let me get my words together. Perforated grill pans can help when cooking delicate proteins like fish to keep them from sticking to the grates and falling apart. Oh, that's a good tip. That's a great tip. And then I also think another thing you can do is, oil. If you oil your fish, maybe in olive oil, which is one of the healthier ones, that will also help keep them from sticking to the grates as well. Let's see. Ketomania says, I grill fish using a pan like that. It works great. And then the Smiling Family says, time restricted eating, intermittent fasting mixes well with weekend barbecue. Start smoking your first meal of the day in the morning. By the time it's done, you've fasted for the first few hours of the day. Okay, that's a good tip, a good mindful approach to your food preparation for the day and consumption. And Ketomania says, I love char on my vegetables. Yes. And correctional officer says, speaking of blade top, beef blade, I like that post Mama Mika recently made that stated she had a machine that was able to slice meats. Yeah, those are good to have, but make sure you're careful with them. I know I almost lost a thumb with mine. Okay, Real Meat Stick says that's a great line. Smoke and char can absolutely transform vegetables the way braising transforms meat. Different technique, same depth and complexity. Lean proteins are not a compromise. They're just a different lane. If you season and cook them right, they can still bring big flavor, texture, and satisfaction. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Wow. So we've been at it and we're just on the first tip. So I got nine more for you. So this is going to be a full featured episode for sure. Let's keep it going. Tip number 2, rethink your marinades and your sauces. So traditional barbecue sauce can pack 12 to 15 grams of sugar per serving. That gets you into dessert territory, not a condiment. Make your own using tomato paste, vinegar, spices, and just a touch of honey or maple syrup. So this gives you fresher, it's fresher, more vibrant, and you control every ingredient. And that's really the key here is you want to have control of what you are eating. For marinades, combine citrus juice. Wait, here we go. Wait. Let me make sure my slides are keeping up with me. Okay, for marinades, combine citrus juice, herbs, garlic, and olive oil. Marinades penetrate deep into the protein and build flavor without adding empty calories. Read the sauce label. So if sugar is in the top 3 ingredients, it's working against the flavor of your meat, not with it. And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of sauces, marinades that we get, and we just don't realize just how much sugar is in them. Think about doing a dry rub only finish, no sauce at all, or put the sauce on the side like we talked about earlier. Let the bark, smoke, and seasoning speak for themselves. And on a well-cooked piece of meat, that's going to be more than enough. Homemade marinades don't just make your food healthier. Citrus, herbs, and garlic penetrate the muscle fiber and create layers of flavor that a bottled sauce sitting on top never can. Okay, I guess I skipped making that slide, but you guys get the point. Okay, the best barbecue flavor, remember this, comes from what happens during the cook. The Maillard reaction, the smoke absorption, the rendered fat. A great sauce enhances that. A sugary one actually masks it, okay? So here's the mindset shift. Your sauce and marinade choices, again, they aren't a health sacrifice. They're actually a flavor upgrade. So the best pit masters have always known that clean, balanced ingredients make better barbecue anyway. All right. So again, giving you guys another way to think about this. Let's think about it from a completely different perspective than what we've been taught or what we've been hearing for all these years. Okay, let me see. Real Meat Stick says, I think we already hit that one, but it's worth saying again, lean proteins are not a compromise, they're just a different lane. Like we just said, you season and cook them right, they can still bring big flavor, texture, and satisfaction. And I know Real Meat Stick kind of has a little hidden agenda here, keeping me on this live for a long time. He says he's on one of 9. He's not getting off in 20 minutes. Okay. No, I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. Okay. Correctional officer is saying that there's another surprise quiz question. Dr. Real Meat Stick is putting them out for the class. Take them down or risk failing the exam. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that's about. That might be in the society, or maybe that's in the comments. But I know if Real Meat Stick is putting it up there, it's going to be very thought provoking and worth taking a look at. Kettle Mania says, I can usually get by fine without sauce. Sometimes I will water it down a little bit and just use it as a mild glaze to help reduce the sugar. Okay, so those are good tips to think about. And then Real Meat Stick says the real barbecue flavor, again, this is worth repeating, is built by fire, smoke, fat rendering, and time on the pit. Very well said. Okay, let's get into tip number 3. And this is one I've been wanting to get to. Be mindful of charring. It's still an issue. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is avoid flare ups. And you can do that by trimming excess fat, keep a spray bottle handy, and don't cook over excessively high heat. So high heat cooking is fine, but we don't want it to be like blazing hot, like super duper hot. Why? Cooking over excessively high heat pushes meat past that ideal golden brown crust into burnt territory, which not only destroys the complex flavors you worked hard to build, it's going to create compounds on the surface that aren't good for you over time. I think this gets to that point that was made about wanting to avoid charred food. So I think it's really, how much char are we talking about? Our goal is to have a controlled, confident fire that develops a beautiful bark, not one that incinerates it. And I've said this repeatedly for folks who are just getting into barbecue. Your safer approach is going to be low and slow. But if you do go the direct heat approach, it's important that you keep an eye on those temperatures and how your food is cooking, because again, once your food is burned, there's no recovery. There's no way to fix that. It's burnt. And not only is it not going to taste good, but as we've just talked about, it's not good for you from a health perspective either. Okay, before we go on, I see a lot of activity going on in the comments, which I absolutely love. So let me see where we are. Correctional officer has a question. Does resting the meat affect breaking down proteins? Okay, so I think more about resting the meat as being the point of basically allowing those meat fibers to calm and settle down. Um, Now, there is going to be some carryover cooking, once you pull your protein off of the grill or the smoker. So that temperature, internal temperature, can continue and will continue to climb a little bit. Now, how much further it's going to break down proteins, I'm not really sure, but you can expect again that carryover cooking to maybe it was 200 degrees when you took it off of the smoker. Carryover cooking will probably take it up to 202, 203 before it begins to plateau and then come back down. But I know you guys in the comments, if somebody probably has a more scientific and a better answer than the one that I just tried to provide. So definitely feel free, and you guys may have already done that. So let me continue to go here in the comments. The train man says the condition is called intestinal metaplasia. Okay, I think he's talking about his wife. Without proper diet can lead to cancer. So this speaks to that concern about the char. And let's see, correctional officer says the difference between searing and charring should be explained and understood. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And this may be something that we'll have to do another deep dive on, maybe. So this might be a future part two. We may have to go a little bit deeper, but we'll see where things take us here. Now, Real Meat Stick says, with regard to high heat grilling, so very high heat grilling, smoking, frying, or broiling can create compounds linked to higher cancer risk. So the move is flavor without burning. Yes. So again, we do not want to excessively cook over that high heat to the point where our food is being burned. And to reiterate the point, Real Meat Stick says a little char is one thing, turning it to carbon is another. And a correctional officer says, Meathead would be perfect in the room to really get into the, I think, the specifics about knowing when you're moving from a good, safe char into burned, burned territory. So let me know what you guys think. I mean, is it, because I'm kind of thinking about what is the best way to answer, that question. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the visual cues. Again, we're looking for a crust that is golden brown. So sear marks are a little bit different. That's when, you're getting those intentional sear marks on your steak. And I've heard, and I know I've heard meatheads say that those can really be more for like vanity purposes as opposed to really bringing anything flavorful. I think meathead would argue that you are better off developing that Maillard reaction across the entire surface of your steak than just, where those sear marks are. So he would be an advocate for taking your steak and putting it on a cast iron skillet so that you can get that golden brown crust across the entire surface of the steak instead of just those sear marks. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or if you have anything to add to that. And yes, I concur. Best wishes for your wife's health. And I really sincerely hope that what we talk about here tonight gives you some perspective and thoughts, on if you are going to barbecue for your wife, in terms of the approach and that consideration, of not taking your food to the char level, which, as we've said repeatedly, if you take it too far, that presents a potential health risk. So Real Meat Stick confirms or agrees exactly. We are not chasing wildfire. We are chasing a controlled fire that builds bark, renders clean, and lets the meat shine. Yes. Okay. So for direct heat cooking, once you're above 400 degrees, you want to be thinking about flipping frequently. So at that temperature, the surface of the meat is developing fast, and the risk of burning rather than browning increases significantly. When you get above 500 degrees, then you're moving into seared territory, and you need to be actively managing the cook and definitely not stepping away from the grill. So here's the flip rule of thumb. If it's over direct heat and it's thin, like chicken thighs, fish fillets, burgers, vegetables, flip early and flip often. The fire should be working for you, not against you. Flip frequently and remove food once it reaches a nice golden brown rather than black. So you do need to be paying attention to those visual cues. Again, the goal is golden brown, not black. And here's the thing, golden brown is where all the flavor is anyway. The Maillard reaction is what creates that complex savory crust. Black is just burnt. Okay. Flare ups are a symptom of not running a clean fire. Excess fat dropping onto open flame is the enemy of both flavor and health. And here's where two-zone cooking is, again, a valuable approach in barbecue. Two-zone cooking solves this, and it can solve it on any grill. You have a high heat side for the sear and crust development, and then you have a lower heat side to finish without overcooking or charring. And then also, the quality of the smoke also plays a role in this. So thin blue smoke, that holy grail of smoke, versus the billowy white smoke that you sometimes see. Thin blue smoke is clean combustion, and that's what you want touching your food. Dirty smoke makes your barbecue taste bitter. So here's the mindset shift. Extreme charring isn't a barbecue problem, it's a fire management problem. So master the fire, and you get a beautiful bark, clean smoke flavor, and food that looks and tastes exactly the way it's supposed to. All right. Oh, let's see. Trainman says, so would the Maillard reaction be considered char? No. Um, no. Again, you get that Maillard, you're getting a Maillard reaction when it visually has that golden brown look. That's what you want, and that is a Maillard reaction. Again, when your visual cues tell you that your food is getting really dark, turning black, that's where you're getting like an overchar, you're getting burnt. So that's really the cue. I think I wish I had a better, like a more scientific way to answer it, but I think you need to really just pay attention to those visual cues and really, again, we've said it a few times, you're looking for your crust on your meat to have it should have a golden brown look to it, as opposed to being too dark. Hold on here, let me see if I can pull up something. Uh, if I can see if I can get something to come up with to show. Bear with me here. If I can get a good, seeing if I can get a good picture. Okay, no, that's not what I want. Uh, okay. Okay, so here, let me pull this up. Hold on. So we are just finishing tip number 3. So next is going to be tip number 4, because every time I start sharing, I lose my place. Okay. Okay, so I just went to Mr. Google to ask about the Maillard reaction, right? And it says that a golden brown barbecue steak crust, and I use steak as just the example, is a deep caramelized and slightly crispy layer formed by the Maillard reaction. It appears as a uniform dark brown, not black or pale texture across the surface, providing a stark contrast to the tender interior. And take a chance. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of a view of what that could look like. So hopefully that helps. It was right at the very beginning of this clip, to give you an idea of what you want to see when we're talking about having a golden brown crust. So I'm just gonna go right. Hold on. Okay, I was trying to right. uh, Right there. That's what I want. So you want it to look like that. So hopefully that helps, gives you a visual cue. So that's a kind of a dark brown, but you don't see any black. It's not burnt. This is like an example of getting that whole crust, the whole side, that whole side of steak there, getting that crust over the entire surface of the steak. That's really what we're looking for. So I hope that helps. Okay. All right, let me get to tip number 4. Bear with me. Okay, so we're going to get into tip 4, which is, and keep the questions and comments coming. Absolutely. So let's get into sides. Choose better sides. Skip the, okay, we talked about mayo, just I think it was in the last show. And so here's an advocacy for skipping the mayo heavy coleslaw. So maybe go the vinegar slaw route, but skip the mayo heavy coleslaw and potato salad. A vinegar slaw will take 10 minutes to make and delivers crunch, brightness, and acid balance that cuts through rich barbecue proteins in a way that mayo-based sides never can. It actually makes the meat taste better. And we talked about this in the last episode, the last show, that having something acidic, to cut through all that rich, heavy, barbecue, especially after you've taken your first few bites of that, of that brisket, you need something to help balance it out. Otherwise you're just kind of gorging and stuffing yourself and not really be able to appreciate those great complex barbecue flavors that you develop that you really taste in the first few bites, but then you begin to lose that sensation unless you're able to offset it with something acidic. Okay. Uh, Another alternative, grilled peaches, pineapple, or watermelon with a little char develop a caramelized sweetness that feel indulgent, but is nothing but fruit and fire. All right. Elotes, am I saying that right? Elotes style grilled corn with Greek yogurt instead of mayo. All the richness, all the flavor, and it holds up next to any barbecue plate. Another alternative, grilled potato wedges over fried. The grill adds smokiness and char to a starch that otherwise just sits on the plate. So there's actual flavor happening there. Think lighter sides complement your main dish without weighing you down. So in truth, the side dish is where most people lose the health battle at a barbecue plate. And it's not because of the protein, but because of what's next to it. So better sides can change the whole equation. The mindset shift is better sides aren't a compromise. Grilling your sides with the same care as your protein turns them from an afterthought into something people will be talking about, especially the ladies, in my opinion. The grill makes everything taste better. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other comments here? Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you from the train man. Thanking everybody for. This is what we do. This is what we do here. You know, it's a supportive barbecue community. So I appreciate all of you guys in the chat as well. You know, I'm trying to, give information in real time and answer questions, but I really do rely on the knowledge, the expertise that is out here in this community that you guys share. Um, During the live stream. It really does not go um, unnoticed or unappreciated. And, I just wanted to take a moment to say that. So, again, really do appreciate all you guys, especially, when we start getting into these somewhat sensitive subjects, very cool. Okay. Real Meat Sticks has a barbecue nerd tip. The bark should taste rich and balanced, not burnt. If the outside goes bitter, the fire was too dirty, too hot, or the meat was left in one spot for too long. Yes, absolutely, completely agree. And we mentioned it earlier. A big part of this is your skill as a pit master taking the care to achieve a clean smoke, right? We don't want a dirty smoke. While we all kind of, you talk about getting a little bit of char, we have to be intentional and careful and not overdo it. Be mindful of what temperature your grill is. Again, if it's 400, 500 degrees, you should be flipping often and paying very, very close attention, because when you're cooking at these really hot, high temperatures, burning the food, that's something that can happen super fast, like in a blink of an eye. So definitely at that moment, that is not the moment to step away from the grill. So, the whole set it and forget it, that's more for low and slow cooking. But when you're doing hot and fast and really hot temperatures, that is not the time to be walking away you know, getting wrapped up in the ball game or going to get a drink or what have you, that's when you really need to be paying very close attention. Okay, if you haven't already, please take a moment because we're going to go over these poll results later in the show. What's your biggest barbecue health challenge? Is the poll. You should see it in the YouTube description. A, heavy sauces and marinades. B, managing the char and flare ups. We've been talking a lot about the char. Uh, C, finding healthier sides. And D, getting your diet to work with barbecue. And let me see if I can take a peek here, if I can see what's happening with the current results. So I can say at this point of the show, right now, C and D both have 33% of the vote. So that's healthier sides and making your diet work with barbecue. Those are the two most popular choices, followed by heavy sauces and marinades at 22%. And then at only 11% is char and flare ups. And I kind of wonder, after what we just talked about, if, char and flare ups are going to be at least more top of mind as being something that needs to be considered or thought about in terms of a barbecue challenge. So if you haven't already answered, please go ahead and submit your response to that poll question. All right, so where are we? My goodness, got a late start, but basically we're like an hour in and we are just hitting tip number 5. So hang in there with me. We got a lot more good information. Tip number 5, load up on grilled veggies, okay? Zucchini, bell peppers, asparagus, eggplant, and corn. They all develop incredible sweetness and complexity when kissed by flames. Brush lightly with oil. Season with salt, pepper, and other spices, whatever's your preference is, and grill until tender with coveted char marks. But again, that doesn't mean we're going for, completely like black and just charred all over. Just a little bit of char is good enough. And what you will find is that you will naturally eat more vegetables when they taste this good, crowding out less nutritious options on your plate. Remember, smoke is an ingredient. Smoke makes, and I'm talking about clean smoke. Smoke makes everything, the smoke makes everything better principle applies fully to vegetables. Asparagus, broccolini, corn, zucchini, they all pick up wood smoke flavor in a way that no oven or stove top can replicate. Come on, this is why cooking outside, barbecue, is hands down the best. Yes, I said it. Bell peppers and eggplant develop a silky, complex sweetness over direct heat that makes them almost unrecognizable from their raw state. The grill transformed them. Char marks on vegetables aren't just visual. That caramelization adds a savory, slightly smoky depth that makes vegetables genuinely craveable. By the time this is over, you're going to want to run outside and throw some veggies on the grill. Again, a simple prep is all you need. Good olive oil, kosher salt, cracked pepper, maybe a little bit of garlic powder is all you need. The grill does the rest. And a well-executed grill vegetable platter next to your protein spread doesn't look like a health compromise. It looks like the most flavorful thing on the table. So here's the mindset shift. If your grill only ever sees meat, you're leaving half its value on the table. The same fire that makes your ribs incredible will make your veggies extraordinary. All right. Oh, let's see. The Train Man, he says, I primarily use a pellet grill, so may the smoke and char issue So maybe the smoke and char issue could be kept at a minimum. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Pellet grills are definitely known to have a much lighter smoke profile, than other, than for instance, cooking with charcoal and wood chunks or cooking with obviously with wood split. So the profile is generally going to be um, less smoky, and then also pellets are known to not get as consistently hot, as other cookers as well. So I think a pellet grill is definitely a good cooker to use that kind of provides some natural guardrails. Absolutely. And let's see. Real meat stick, getting back to that visual that we put up, said that the New York strip looked delicious and that the steak is also cooked, yeah, in a pan basted with butter. Yeah, again, cast iron skillet, and you can put your cast iron skillet on your grill, get it nice and hot, and it'll give you a good crust all over. Real Meat Stick says a Mediterranean style barbecue plate with grilled vegetables, olive oil, herbs, yogurt based sauces, beans, and fish lands very differently than a plate built around processed sides and sugary extras. Yeah, that's a great point. That's one of the ones that, I hope you guys remember moving forward for sure. And he says that the same is true for low carb or higher protein eaters who swap heavy starches for slaws, greens, grilled vegetables, or legumes. Am I saying that right? Is it legumes? Legumes? I see the word, but I never say that word. Okay, a small amount of mustard can sometimes be used to help replace using things like mayonnaise. And correctional officer says, my wife is now ear hustling. She's in the kitchen multitasking and has become a staunch supporter of the society. All right, well, that deserves a cheer. Yeah, wives and partners are definitely welcome and are definitely part of the barbecue family that we have established for sure. And we want everyone to get this good information. Kettlemania says broccoli slaw is good with dill, pickle, relish, and mustard, and a small amount of mayonnaise and seasoning it with Tony's. Are we talking Tony Chachere? Is that what we're talking about when you say Tony's? And Real Meat Stick says, great meat can still feel heavy if the sides don't bring balance, acid, freshness, and texture. Um, uh, if they bring no balance, acid, freshness, and texture matter just as much as smoke and bark. Ooh, this is a good one. Yeah. Sweet potatoes are good grilled, also as carrots. I love sweet potatoes on the grill. Love them. Mama Mika says to Kettle Mania, I need to try both of those. Love grilled veggies, especially mushrooms and bell peppers. Real meat stick. If you strip the process down to protein, fire, smoke, and seasoning, is live fire cooking really the problem, or is it everything we pile on top of it? I think we know the answer to that question. Yes, it is what we pile on top. It is definitely not live fire cooking. It is not barbecue. Barbecue is not the problem. I can say that definitively, and I will argue with anyone who wants to fight me on that. Treat vegetables like ingredients, not garnish. A little char, clean smoke, and the right finish can make them as memorable as the meat. And best fire-friendly veggies. Here's a list: peppers, onions, zucchini, asparagus, mushrooms, Brussels sprouts, corn, cabbage, and cauliflower. Season simply with oil, salt, pepper, and garlic, then finish bright. Absolutely. And we say all the time, anything that you love to cook, anything you think about cooking, can be cooked outside on the grill. And again, cooking outside, cooking with some simple ingredients, and cooking with smoke. Smoke is that ingredient. A clean, not dirty smoke is an ingredient that you cannot replicate inside the house, no matter how hard you try. Okay, so let me move to tip number 6. And I think we got someone said this very early on. I think even before we got started. Maybe it was Kettle Mania, I think, who said, be aware of portion size. Okay. Slow and low barbecue produces deeply satisfying, intensely flavorful results. You don't need as much of it to feel satisfied because the flavor density is high. Shift the plate ratio slightly, so more protein and grilled veggies, a little less heavy on the starch, and it won't feel like a restriction when every element on the plate is fired and seasoned well. So aim for this. Half the plate grilled protein and veggie, a quarter for a lighter starch, and the remaining quarter for your barbecue splurge item. That is a balanced, satisfying plate, not a diet plate. So maybe that splurge item, like Mama Mika said, she loves her cornbread. Maybe that's the splurge item. Lots of options, but you can do that if you have a good balanced plate. You don't have to feel guilty about having a splurge item included. Keep it balanced. And me included, let's all be more intentional about getting these veggies on the plate. The communal nature of barbecue actually helps. So when there's a full spread, people naturally eat a variety rather than piling one thing high. If you're giving them lots of good choices and not just brisket or not just, pulled pork, you give them some other alternatives, they will indulge and make a plate that's more balanced than just going heavy on the ribs, hopefully. A perfectly smoked piece of meat with a great bark and clean seasoning is so flavorful that smaller portions are genuinely satisfying in a way that a bland grilled chicken breast never is. Again, this is a plus for cooking it out on the smoker. Here's the mindset shift. Portion awareness at a barbecue isn't necessarily about eating less, it's about eating intentionally. So when everything on the plate is firing on all cylinders flavor-wise, you don't need to overload it. All right. The training man says I'm at work, so let's see, I'll be on this thing and I won't be able to comment. Thanks everyone. Well, appreciate you. I appreciate you for jumping in and commenting when you could. So no shame in that. And yeah, continue to listen, definitely. Correctional officer says, how do you have your sweet potato on the grill? Do you use foil? I have used foil, and here's one that I haven't done in a while, but it actually goes right in hand, with this topic. So a while ago, I started to get into trying to do like what I would call like a one pot meal. So that would be like, getting a chicken and putting it in like a Dutch oven, and then including in the Dutch oven, it could be like potatoes, carrots, sweet potatoes, and letting them all cook in one pot. You'd be surprised. Those natural juices flowing from the chicken, how they help, braise those those um those veggies like carrots, sweet potatoes, or regular potatoes. Comes out, your veggies are going to come out super tender, super flavorful, and that's one of my favorite ways to do sweet potatoes. Got me thinking about that too. But yeah, it's like a kind of like a one pot recipe. I'm not sure if I ever did a video on that. I probably should, but that's one approach that I like. Real Meat Stick says, portion awareness matters. Protein choice. Keep the meat reasonable. Then build the plate with greens, cabbage, black-eyed peas, okra, or sweet potatoes for a healthier barbecue plate that still has soul. Absolutely. And then we've got M Black's Test Prep says, I'm here to party. All right. Let's go. Let's go. And then Real Meat Stick says, I wrap my potatoes, all potatoes or yams, in foil, seasoned with some avocado oil and salt. Yeah, you can't go wrong, with that approach. That's I think a safe way to make sure that you get your potatoes, your yams, fully cooked and tender. I think when you have them wrapped, if you can take like a fork or a toothpick and stick it right into the foil, into the potato, and if it goes in nice, smooth, easy, without much tug, then you know that your your yams are done. All right, let's keep it moving, guys. Tip number 7, let's get into some specifics. So barbecue can fit every major diet. Keto and paleo, a smoked brisket, pork butt, or a rack of ribs with salt and pepper rub is practically keto by default. So here's where we're going heavy on the proteins, right? No fillers, no processed carbs, just protein, fat, and smoke. If you're coming at this with the Mediterranean diet, olive oil marinades, grilled fish, charred veggies, fresh herbs, citrus. This is Mediterranean cooking. The grill is the Mediterranean kitchen. Plant-based, mushrooms, jackfruit, cauliflower steaks, smoked tofu. The grill adds the smoke, char, and depth that makes plant proteins genuinely compelling rather than just filling. If you're trying to go, oh, okay, I missed that one, but here's another one I don't have a slide for. But if you're trying to go gluten-free, traditional barbecue is naturally gluten-free. So watch your sauce labels, as we talked about earlier, in your cupboard. The cook itself has nothing to apologize for. The grill doesn't discriminate. It makes every dietary approach taste better than it would any other way. The mindset shift: barbecue isn't one style of eating, it's a cooking method, and it's the most diet flexible cooking method you have access to in your own backyard. Okay. Tip number 8: what smoke actually does to your food. So here we might get a little bit sciencey, and we may have some folks that have even more info than what I can provide. I'm just going to try and provide at a real basic, you know, easy to digest level. Okay, so we've talked about why we need to have clean smoke as an ingredient going on our food, or why that's much better and preferred as opposed to like a dirty smoke. So thin blue smoke versus billowy white smoke. Your thin blue smoke, again, is clean combustion. It penetrates the meat and deposits flavor compounds that create that unmistakable barbecue taste. On the other hand, white smoke is incomplete combustion, and it's what's going to make your food taste bitter and acrid. Let's talk about the fabled smoke ring. So, the smoke ring is a chemical reaction, myoglobin in the meat reacting with nitric oxide from the wood combustion. So, it's not burnt meat, it's not raw meat, it's chemistry. And it's a sign of a well managed cook. Your wood choice drives the flavor profile. So, just as an example, oak gives a clean, medium smoke that works pretty well with everything. Hickory is bolder and pairs well with pork. Fruit woods like apple and cherry are lighter and sweeter. They go great with chicken and fish. But as I say all the time, go with what you can get natively in your area that's affordable, and don't go out of your way trying to get a specific wood. And then I'm thinking, like, steer clear of like the woods in a bag, that you might see at Home Depot or Lowe's. You're going to be paying more per pound or per ounce than what you would pay, if you get wood natively. So clean wood smoke used correctly is not the health concern. The issue, again, is dirty smoke, flare up char, and heavily processed smoke flavoring that you find in many commercial products. The compounds from charring and the compounds from clean wood smoke are completely different things. Managing your fire protects both the flavor and the integrity of what you're cooking. So, again, smoke isn't something to be afraid of. Say it all the time, it's an ingredient. Learn to read it, manage it, and use it intentionally, and it becomes one of the most powerful flavor tools that you have. Real Meat Stick says, my masculinity prevents me from doing keto and paleo. I risk testosterone issues with soy like tofu. Yeah, you won't find tofu on my grill. I'm just giving you guys, literally giving you food for thought. Okay. Um, Real Meat Stick says, I can't go live fire caveman and justify a gluten allergy. Imagine telling your wife you're allergic to toast. There goes that masculine hunter and provider side. Hey, hun, I'm here to protect you and the kids. But if that person threatening us comes at me with a break, maybe I'm misreading that. Comes at me with a break. Well, that's my Superman weakness. So I don't know. That might be a typo. Not sure. Not sure. But anyway, yeah. Again, the main point that I'm hoping that you take away from all of that is, again, you know, no matter, getting back to tip number 7 about the different types of diets that are available out there, whichever one you choose, whatever approach you choose to take in order to eat healthier, cleaner, barbecue can absolutely fit into your approach. So don't be fooled, or don't believe anyone that tries to say that barbecue is unhealthy. That's really the point that I'm trying to get across here to you guys. Okay, Real Meat Stick clarifies that what he meant to say was bread. So again, I'm here to protect you and the kids, but if that person threatening us comes at me with bread, well, that's my Superman weakness. I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, let's move to tip number 9. And this is a practical one. I feel like we talked about this on the episode where I was giving you guys tips for, you know, hosting your barbecue party and your approach. And you need to make sure that you're giving yourself grace, giving yourself getting the help that you need, getting proper rest and proper hydration. This goes right in line with what we talked about in that episode. Okay, so remember, standing over radiant heat for hours is physically demanding. Pitmaster dehydration is real, and most people don't realize how much it affects both how they feel and how they cook. So make sure that you drink water consistently throughout the cook, not just when you're thirsty. By the time you feel thirsty over a hot fire, you're already behind. Heavy barbecue meals plus alcohol is a combination that catches a lot of people off guard. Alternate water between those drinks. Eat lighter sides alongside the rich proteins and give yourself grace. Rest during a long cook isn't laziness, it's strategy. A rested pitmaster makes better decisions about the fire, the timing, and the pull temp than a pitmaster who is exhausted. Heaven forbid, you get towards the end of the cook and you literally doze off, you fall asleep, and then you miss something important. Maybe the food goes for too long, or your fire, if you're cooking with a stick burner, your fire is about to die out. It's those types of things that we want to protect against by making sure we're getting the proper rest. The mental health benefit of barbecue is real. Cooking outdoors, slowing down, working with your hands, feeding people you care about. All of these things are good for you in ways that don't show up on a nutrition label. I mean, I honestly think this is the reason why I fell in love with barbecue. When I decided to really give it a shot, I think it was kind of like the unexpected benefit that really grabbed me. It was just something about being outside and that sense of accomplishment, when you cook great food, learning how to be patient, slowing down out there, And best of all, feeding the folks that I care about, making them happy, and seeing those instant reactions when they taste your food, all of those things, definitely a mental health benefit that I thrive on. And yeah, I think that's why I love and fell in love with barbecue. The mindset shift. Taking care of yourself on cook day isn't separate from the craft, it's part of it. So the best cooks show up hydrated, rested, and present. That's when the best barbecue happens. All right. Let's see. Correctional officer says, tonight's episode is awesome and has given me an incentive to examine my barbecue strategy, being able to connect with my high blood pressure, especially since I take blood pressure medication. And he says, better late than never. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever ailment or condition, health issue that you're trying to improve, I just feel like, taking full control, of the food that you eat is something that we can do. And we can have fun doing it when we're cooking it outside on the grill, and taking that full control where you control the ingredients, the ingredients, you're avoiding all that processed food, you're avoiding things that just have too much sugar and unintended ingredients that aren't good for you. When you take control, I think you know, you feel better and more accountable. I don't know if that's the right word. Um, but you're being proactive. You're being proactive in trying to improve your health. I mean, obviously, there are other things that you can do, like being more active, exercise more, being more intentional about that. But I think being intentional and taking control of the food that you eat is a huge proactive step that you can make, and it's absolutely something you can do if you've already got a grill smoker outside. Then you really have no excuse, because you should be cooking on them on a regular basis if you're really serious about not only getting better at barbecue, but you can have direct impact on your own health. Let me get off of my soapbox. Correctional officer also says protection of the eyes is important too. And you've said this a few times, wear goggles. Now, I admit I have not gotten around to that point of throwing on some goggles, but I am cognizant of the fact that when you open that lid to your grill, and you get smoke coming right at you. I'm definitely cognizant of that. You know, turn your head to the side, close your eyes, let that smoke, go past you. Simple things you can do to make sure you're not taking the brunt of the smoke. Real Meat Stick says, blood pressure meds deal with your salt intake from hypertension, not the fats from cholesterol. Fats deal with high cholesterol. Yeah, and I think, again, we can work to improve on all of those elements. And, we can be proactive. Real Meat Stick says barbecue is more than food. It is ritual, purpose, creativity, and peace. For a lot of us, the fire is therapy, and the cook is what keeps us grounded. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let me keep it going here, guys. We have made it to tip number 10, the truth about barbecue's reputation. So, traditional barbecue predates processed food by centuries. It is one of the oldest whole food cooking traditions in America. and it's rooted in community, as Meat Stick just said. It's rooted in community, resourcefulness, and craft. The unhealthy barbecue reputation comes from fast food chain versions, convenience store barbecue chips, and sugar loaded bottled sauces, not from backyard pitmasters who know what they're doing. When you control the ingredients, the fire, and the process, there are no fillers, no artificial smoke flavoring, no high fructose corn syrup, no shortcuts, just protein, wood, fire, and seasoning. Real barbecue is one of the most transparent cooking methods there is. You can see exactly what goes on it, exactly what it cooks over, and exactly when it is done. The African American roots of barbecue in this country represent generations of people feeding communities with skill, creativity, and love. That tradition deserves more respect than being considered a junk food. Okay. And the mindset shift, barbecue doesn't need to apologize for anything. We just need to cook it right. All right. I think that's what it boils down to. If you are mindful about how you are cooking your barbecue, you're gonna produce some good food. You can produce some healthy food. You can do it all on the grill or the smoker. And like Real Meat Stick said earlier, let's see, where was it? I'm gonna pull that one back up. He said it's ritual, purpose, creativity, and peace. The fire is therapy. Where is it? The fire is therapy, and the cook is what keeps us grounded. Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see. Hold on. Uh, okay. Let me see. What are you guys talking about here? Wait a minute. Okay, so question from Real Meat Stick: if healthy barbecue still has to satisfy the soul, the plate, and the people eating it, then where is the real line between smart barbecue and stripped down barbecue? Well, that's a good question. Let me read that again. If healthy barbecue still has to satisfy the soul, the plate, and the people eating it, then where is the real line between smart barbecue and stripped down barbecue? Huh. That is a good question. I kind of feel like, well, first of all, I'm kind of like who's fooling with stripped down barbecue? And what is stripped down barbecue? And whatever it is, however you define stripped down barbecue, does that really qualify as barbecue? Hmm. Ponder that. I'll let you guys chew on that one. Okay. Real Meat Stick record broken. Okay, I guess are you guys talking about how long we've been on? I think our longest episode was over 2 hours. If I go back, I'll have to go back and look. I think when Meathead was on, it may have been over 2 hours, or maybe something else. I think we do have a 2 hour episode in there somewhere. Not sure. Uh, okay, Real Meat Stick says, yeah, skip Dickies and Mission Barbecue. Take the time, the mental health break, and the love of craft, and do it at home. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay, Real Meat Stick. Does it count if he restarted? We need to keep it going just in case. All right, all right. I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna edit out the beginning. Um, Live version, I guess, will probably continue to live on YouTube, but I think I'm gonna have to do an edited version as well. Does that count? Honestly, yeah, I'm gonna say it counts. I'm gonna say it counts. Because it's all, yeah, it's all part of it, and I think it counts. But whatever. Anyway, you guys, I don't know. You guys are trying to keep me on here all night. Okay. Jeff says, love tip number 10. It's all about the cook. And the train man says, I wish this show was on Saturday night or Sunday so I could watch all the time. Okay. See, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So I would say, yeah, going live on the weekends a little bit tough just because of other family, commitments and things like that for sure. But I'm not opposed to doing like, maybe once in a while, doing a Saturday or a Sunday evening stream. If that's something you guys are interested in, I'm definitely up for it. That's something that could be on the table for consideration. Here to serve the people, right? Real Meat Stick has the perfect perspective for the therapeutic and holistic aspect of the art, while my barbecue gently weeps. Yeah, I think a little insider talk there with regard to the gently weeps reference back to the Tom Petty Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction and the legendary Prince on the guitar. We were talking about that inside of the society. Okay, so let's get to this. I'm going to read off the final results here, or at least what I'm considering final to this point with regard to tonight's poll, which was, what's your biggest barbecue health challenge? So here's where we landed. So with 40%, it was making your diet work with barbecue. 40%. That's the one that got the most votes. Followed by healthier sides at 30%, and then at 20%, it's heavy sauces and marinades, and then 10% the char and the flare up. And that's kind of in line with what I was expecting. I was fully expecting char and flare ups to probably get the least votes, because I feel like subconsciously most of us feel like we've got that under control. But yeah, figuring out how to get your diet to coincide with barbecue being the top vote getter does not surprise me, but hopefully from this episode you got some good ideas on how to achieve that, because I think it's definitely achievable, for sure. Let's see. Okay. Real Meat Stick said to correctional officer, I think he knows he is onto us. We need to show our love for his time and attention another way. Maybe you can serenade him. All right, you guys. Okay, I'm flexible for any time. Okay, now you're bragging. Early retirement is great and allows for me to be available for the society anytime. So we got another kind of like a thumbs up for you might be onto something with the Sunday night live chat. Yep. And okay. I'm not even going to read that one. Mama Mika says, this episode definitely makes me want to try more seafood on the grill. All right. Yeah, I definitely think that the seafood is so highly underrated in barbecue. I think a lot of us, have probably tried to do a salmon, and I think salmon definitely is great on the grill or the smoker. Shrimp was one of the first things that I taught myself how to do. My daughter loves shrimp off of my grill. Now, I have to admit, for health reasons, I've had to stop eating shrimp. It doesn't agree very well with my health. I think I can definitely trace a gout flare up or two to consuming too much shrimp over too short of a period of time. I think it's the purine that's in it. It doesn't agree with me, but shrimp on the grill is great. Mahi, halibut, those are also outstanding. And like I said earlier, there's definitely a lot of good seasonings. I think that goes well with a lot of different fish, tuna, swordfish. I mean, all of it can go on the grill or the smoker. The train man has a question. What days are the live streams for the paid version of the society? So first, hopefully you're in the free version of the society. You can start there for sure, where we just keep the conversation going all week long with lots of great comments, questions, and many of the folks that are here in the chat tonight are already part of the society. Now, in terms of the nights that the live streams are for the inner circle, that's the paid component of the society. So it's flexible. So I'll say of late, they've been happening on the same time and day of the week as the regular podcast. So for instance, next week, it's going to be inside the inner circle. It's going to be Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. But we have played around with some other nights as well. So basically, what I try to do is find a time, a day and a time that most people are able to participate. And I know that since most of the folks, participate live for the podcast, I know that Wednesday evenings, 6 p.m. Pacific works. So we've been doing that for a while, but I'm open to, picking a different day of week, if necessary. I'm also really thinking about, as it warms up, and especially when we get into summertime and the days are longer, I fully anticipate that I'm going to do inside the inner circle, we're going to do a meetup where I'm actually cooking outside as well. I have that definitely on my radar. So that might be like a Saturday, where we're just hanging out and folks can drop in, drop out if they need to. But I'm envisioning, being outside with a meetup going on, for hours, however long it takes, to get through the cook, just hanging out, talking barbecue and enjoying the weather and the experience. So that's definitely something we're going to do inside of the inner circle coming up pretty soon. So for sure, definitely check it out. Let me actually put that up on the screen. So if you are interested, would love to have you. Wednesday, April 29th. It's going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So we won't be live streaming here, but we will be doing the live meetup inside of the Inner Circle. And if that's something you want to become a part of, go to backyardsmokemaster.com/premium, and then you will see the information to get into the Inner Circle. Okay, so definitely hope to see you there. And if nothing else, make sure you're signed up to get inside of the society, the free component, because it's really been growing over the last maybe month or two, and the discussions that we have in there have been outstanding. Matter of fact, let me pull up the society page. Okay, so this is what it looks like inside the society. It's a lot like, it's like a Facebook group, but this is just strictly barbecue. You see up here, we've got the calendar entry showing that the Inner Circle chat is happening 7 days from tonight. And just to give you an example, kudos to Real Meat Stick. I think it's here. Real Meat Stick, when he heard about tonight's topic. So for you guys that are in the society, make sure you go to this post. One of Real Meat Stick's comments. He talked about how he had, I think he did a talk on a very similar, topic. Like, is barbecue unhealthy, or do people mostly mean oversized portions, sugary sauces, processed sides, and too much sodium? And he provides a few angles, some food for thought, very, very thorough, well-written comment here. There's some information here for the benefit of pregnant patients, older adults, just a wealth of good info. And I think he included he has got some links too that you guys can refer to, some references when it comes to the medical side of barbecue. And he included some information here about red and processed meat and cancer from the American Cancer Society. There's some information from the American Heart Association, diet and lifestyle, as well as some information about sodium. He's got a link here about from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention with regard to people who are at increased risk for listeria infection. And then also some info similarly from the U.S. Food and Drug Information. So, this is just like an example. No gatekeeping. Folks are inside of the society wanting to share information, help each other. There's some moments of levity, some lighthearted stuff. But then we go pretty deep sometimes when it's necessary. Like here's a post here from Eric about airflow on the Weber Summit Kamado. Kenneth jumped in here, showed off some beef ribs that he did the other day. Discussion about the Weber Smoky Mountain. So just, it's just a variety of different posts and topics. Here I pinned a post about safe grill cleaning options and best practices, because that's one of the things that I'm real sensitive to, making sure that you don't go out and buy a wired bristled brush, because I don't want to see you experience, having one of those little bristles break off and end up in your food. So really, just as things pop up, topical related to barbecue, whatever's on your mind, you have a question, a recipe, a food you want to share, or just a question about a particular grill or a smoker or an approach, or something you heard about or saw, We throw them inside the society, and usually somebody's available, to answer that question. So definitely invite you to do that. So if you want to get into the society, go to backyardsmokemaster.com/society. And again, if you're interested in participating in our live meetup calls like the one we're having next week, go to backyardsmokemaster.com/premium and you get information about that. Of course, you can also feel free to, holler at me on social media or anywhere. Get in touch with me, and I can answer any question that you might have. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of good stuff here. Let me see if we've got any additional comments here before we wrap. Real Meat Stick said, "My biggest barbecue health challenge is portion control. I love food." Yeah, portion control. I mean, that's a legit challenge and issue. I know for me, I've noticed about myself as I've gotten older, my craving isn't as large as it used to be. So I think in the past, my eyes were bigger than my stomach. I think that's the saying. So I would load up, but now I've gotten some discipline, and I'm okay, with just putting a few items and see how I feel before going for the big plate. But that is definitely a concern. Barbecue can absolutely fit a smart lifestyle, but the protein choice, processing level, sodium load, and the eater's health status all matter. Absolutely. A grilled salmon fillet with lemon and herbs is not the same conversation as heavily processed smoked sausage, just like a clean chicken plate is not the same as a giant tray of ribs, beans, mac. All right, careful. You're kind of nudging up to the line because we love all those things you just listed. But no, I totally get and agree with the point being made. Here's a question. Has anyone experimented with spinach? Decades ago, I had a college roommate who was from Turkey, and he would bring home spinach that his mother made, and it was delicious. So I'll let you guys tackle that one. I hate spinach. Can't stand it. My daughter loves spinach. My wife loves spinach, but I never, I can't offer you anything on the spinach thing. But again, it's good for you. I know that makes you strong like Popeye. So yeah, let us know if you guys have any tips about doing spinach. Real Meat Stick says, my barbecue nerd take is that barbecue is one of the most flexible cooking styles there is. Yep. It can be indulgent, but it can also be clean, protein forward, vegetable forward, and highly adaptable. I agree 1000% with that. The trick is helping people understand that not all barbecue plates are built the same and not all eaters have the same needs. Yeah, you definitely want to try, if you can, take into consideration, the dietary needs, the preferences of the folks that you are cooking for. Take all of those things into account for sure. But I totally agree. Barbecue is fully adaptable. And I think it can support, any of your cooking goals. Anything you can do on the oven, stovetop, there's a way to do it on the grill as well. Real Meat Stick says he sets time aside. Even when I'm in a hotel room for travel, to make these live streams. Okay, well, thank you. I do appreciate that, and that does not go unnoticed. I'm happy that the streams bring value to you folks, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but definitely feel free to tell a friend about what we do here on the live streams, share the video, watch the replays. I still have to get better about getting the audio versions up on like Spotify and the other podcast platforms. But for sure, all the replays are immediately available on YouTube, and you can listen to them on demand for sure. Correctional officers is like always hoping and wishing everyone to have a great remainder of the weekend. Train Man says, I'll be at work, but I'll be there. All right, so we've got a lot of great comments. Really appreciate you guys. So let me do a quick recap. So here's what I want you to walk away with tonight, because we talked about a lot. And these topics always kind of surprise me because they don't come top of mind, when I think initially about barbecue and what do I want to talk about, with the audience, with you guys. And it's the stuff like side dishes and, being healthy, the kind of going deeper in barbecue. So I'm always pleasantly surprised by how well, these episodes are received. So remember this, barbecue does not need to be modified or apologized for. It needs to be understood. When you know your proteins, control your fire, build your sides with intention, and cook with purpose, you've got one of the most flexible, satisfying, and honestly, one of the healthiest cooking methods available to you. So that's not a compromise. That's the actual craft. Tonight, we covered 10 ways to grill smarter for any diet or lifestyle. So remember, let me get that up here. Remember, no show on April 29th. The Inner Circle meets instead. The link, as we've talked about, is also in the description. The next live podcast will be 2 weeks from tonight, Wednesday, May 6th, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, do all the things. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who thinks barbecue and healthy eating can't coexist. Prove them wrong. Until next time, barbecue family, keep the fire going. This is Kenyatta Robinson. Take care. Get out there, enjoy your grills and smokers, cook something healthy. I will see you very soon in the next one.